Welcome back, everyone, to the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast. This is episode number 105. And yes, right off the rip, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're only seeing one person on the screen. If you're listening on any of our audio platforms, it's only me talking. Just Dominic with you today. We were dealing with some technical difficulties coming into tonight for whatever reason. So we're trying to get those resolved as soon as possible. So hopefully you guys can put up with me, I should say, for a few minutes here as we chit chat. We're going to go over UFC Vegas 28. We're going to preview those six fights on the main card. But first, it is time for everyone's favorite segment of the week, and that is the news. So as always, we've got our fight announcements coming up first. And although we've had some time off between fight cards, I should say, between UFC Vegas 27 and UFC Vegas 28, there haven't been that many big fights announced. So really three that we're going to discuss here off the top. First one being some bantamweight action. We've got number 15 ranked Chito Vera going up against Davy Grant. This is going to be on June 19th. This is the UFC Fight Night headlined by Dan Ige and the Korean Zombie. So that's going to be a barn burner main event there. And this is a very good fight for the bantamweight division. Chito Vera coming off of that loss against Jose Aldo in his last outing. Very competitive up until that third round. And for Davy Grant, he's on a 2-fight win streak, both via KO. Absolutely brutal. The last one being the performance of the night bonus. So this man is on a mission right now, getting his biggest test, biggest name. Look for that one to be a barn burner on June 19th. I believe that's UFC Vegas 29. Second fight announcement here. Wow. This has fight of the night written all over it. We've got Michel Pereira versus Nico Price. It's going to be July 10th on UFC 264. This card is absolutely bonkers. If you don't know, it's of course headlined the trilogy, Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor Part 3. We've got Stephen Thompson versus Gilbert Burns and a plethora of other matchups. Even Kevin Lee making his return to welterweight against Sean Brady. Now we've got Pereira versus Price. These guys just go in and always leave the fans satisfied, to say the least. Michel Pereira, the guy that does all the flips and crazy stuff inside of the octagon. Nico Price has an up kick finish, elbows from the bottom finishes. These guys are just straight killers, savages, and they're now paired up to go one-on-one at UFC 264. Going to be an absolute banger there. And then the last fight announcement, oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. This one we're a little late on because it did come during this kind of lull where we don't do the news unless it's a preview or recap episode. But we've got the number 1 ranked men's featherweight in Max Holloway, the former champion, the longest win streak in that division's history, going up against Yair Rodrigues. He's ranked 3rd. We've not seen him in the octagon since 2019. Long delay. He had some issues with USADA and all kinds of weird stuff, but he's back. And who to welcome him in the former champion Max Holloway. This is going to be very interesting to see how this one plays out. Holloway choosing to stay active instead of waiting for a title shot. We, of course, know he had his last fight in January of this year against Calvin Kattar, where he put on that 5-round, just beautiful performance, absolute domination in that one. And Yair, this is a tough task for him, but he's ranked 3rd for a reason. And if he can come in and beat Max, he's probably next in line for a title shot. I mean, this is essentially a number 1 contender bout, so I'm really looking forward to this one. That is the main event, of course. It's July 17th, so the week before Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. And then the week after, July 24th, TJ Dillashaw got rescheduled in his bout with Corey Sandhagen. So we've got 3 straight main events in the month of July that are absolutely nuts. But look out for this featherweight title eliminator, essentially, is what I'm calling it there. So let us know what you guys think about these fight announcements, your predictions, what you think is going to play out in those. Now, we do have a little bit to talk about in the rest category. Nothing too crazy. However, it is in relation to The Ultimate Fighter Season 29. The reboot is here. If you didn't listen or watch our episode on Wednesday, we did a deep dive on the history of The Ultimate Fighter, all the way from Season 1, some of the best moments, some of the best coach rivalries, the champions that have came from The Ultimate Fighter. Make sure to give that a listen if you have not already. However, the first episode aired for season 29, and we had our first fight. So obviously this year is men's bantamweight and middleweight. Two coaches, Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. Those two, of course, going to square off for that title shot for the title when this season comes to a close. And in this first one, really, you just kind of get a background of some of the fighters. They take you through the house. Dana White gives a big, fun speech to all of them. And then, of course, you have your first fight, and it was the middleweight bout, the number one overall middleweight chosen. And Andre Petroski was taking on Aaron Phillips. Andre Petroski is on Ortega's team, and Aaron Phillips was on Volkanovski's team. And Petroski is an absolute beast of a man. And he came out and made it look easy. A very good grappler that he is, but very strong, very powerful. And he gets the guillotine choke in the first round, 4 minutes and 42 seconds in. So he advances on to the semifinals. Congratulations to Andre Petroski. Aaron Phillips, keep your head up, man. Aaron Phillips was a guy that came all the way from Alaska and really even said on the show he was teaching himself MMA through YouTube videos because there's hardly anyone up there in his neck of the woods in Alaska to help train with him. So keep your head up if you're Aaron Phillips. And for Andre, again, congratulations. You're moving on. It was really fun to see the Ultimate Fighter return. They did a good job. Obviously, it's on ESPN Plus Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time for those of you that were wondering. And episode 2 is coming next week. And on that episode, we've got Team Volkanovski's number one pick, the number one overall pick of the entire show, and that is Mitch Raposo. He's an undefeated bantamweight, and he's going to be taking on Team Ortega's Ludwig Sholinian. Hopefully that's the right pronunciation. So that's, again, going to be at 135 pounds. It should be a very interesting bout. I'm really intrigued to see Mitch Raposo go to work. Obviously, if you're the number one overall pick on the show, you've got that hype behind you for a reason. So I'm really excited for that one. Looking forward to it on episode 2 of the season. But in terms of the news, that's all we've got. And now it's time to preview some fights. It is UFC Vegas 28. We have a 6-fight main card, and it has been plagued by some cancellations. There were some notable names that got pulled off, Nate Landwehr being one of them. I'm blanking on another one, but then there was also a huge fight that had already been delayed once in Amanda Hebos and Angela Hill in the women's strawweight division. Unfortunately, that one fell through once again, so who knows when we'll get to see that matchup. However, the show must go on, and this is a card where, yes, there's some lesser-known people, but sometimes that's not the biggest of deals. I mean, these guys still can come out and put on a show. We've had so many preview shows of these fight nights where there's not a bunch of big-name people, and they still go out and put on great performances, and I don't expect it to be anything less than that for UFC Vegas 28. So without further ado, the first fight of the night is going to be Tom Breese and Antonio Arroyo. This is a middleweight bout, 185 pounds. Tom Breese, a veteran of the UFC now, he's 12-3. 5-3 in the promotion. He's got 5 KO, TKO, 6 submissions, 8 of those 11 finishes in the very first round. Notable win against Daniel Kelly, that was via TKO, and then notable losses to Sean Strickland via split decision, Brendan Allen via TKO, and he also got submitted by Omari Akhmedov. And on the other side, we've got Antonio. He's 9-4, but he's 0-2 in the UFC. But oddly enough, he went 2-0 on the Contender Series. So I'm going to be curious to see what comes of it here in his third go-around in the octagon. He does have 4 KO, TKOs, and 4 submissions. So that's 8 out of 9 via finish, and 7 of those 8 have came in the first round. And I will say that his first 2 fights in the UFC, very notable opponents. Both were decision losses. He lost to Andre Muniz and then Darren Wynn. Of course, we know Andre Muniz just had that big win against Jacare Souza at UFC 262, the prelim headliner, as a matter of fact. So this should be an interesting bout here. Both guys like to finish. I mean, literally have over a 90% finishing clip. And for Antonio especially, he's looking to kind of fight for his career here, fight for his job, because if he goes out and loses, he would be 0-3. And it's crazy because when we get these Contender Series prospects, especially a guy that went 2-0 on the show, they usually have a pretty successful early on career, that is. So it's a tough task here taking on a veteran in Tom Breese after going 0-2 to start your tenure in the promotion. And I just really think that the veteran expertise of Tom Breese is going to be able to get the job done in this one. Early warning, I have a lot of finishes predicted for this UFC Vegas 28 card, and the first finish is going to come on the first fight of the night. And I got my notes right here, or not my notes, but my predictions. I'm going to Tom Breese, third round KO TKO to start the night off. Again, he's a veteran of the game, loves to finish fights, very well rounded. I believe he's from the United Kingdom as well, so a market behind him as well. And he's looking to really get his name out there in this middleweight division. He's been back and forth, fought some tough guys, so he's going to get a win here, I believe, at UFC Vegas 28. For Antonio Arroyo, can he win this fight? 100%. And he is going to have some extra motivation. Again, he could be fighting for his career here in this one, so be on the lookout for Arroyo to maybe cause some issues for Breese, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I'm going Tom Breese to start the night off on the main card. Next up, Dusko Todorovic is back. This is now, let's see, I just want to make sure. Yeah, his third fight in the UFC and also his third fight on the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast. This man just loves getting his name out there on our show. He's taken on Gregory Rodrigues at the middleweight division, 185 pounds. Dusko is 10-1, 1-1 in the UFC, and he also went 1-0 on the Contender Series. He's got 6 KO TKOs, 3 submissions, so that's 9 out of 10 via finish, 6 of which have came in the first round. Notable wins against the aforementioned Michel Pereira. Funny enough, this was at SBC 19 back in 2018. That was via TKO. And then he also beat Daquan Townsend in his UFC debut. And the only loss on his record and in the UFC came against Punahele Soriano via TKO, in a fight that most expected was going to be pretty wild for the short time that it lasted. And for Gregory Rodrigues, making his UFC debut here, he is 9-3, but he lost his lone fight on the Contender Series. So we're getting a lot of Contender Series gentlemen on this card, and that's great. You guys know how much I love the Contender Series, but it's odd because we have one person in the first fight of the night that went 2-0 on the Contender Series, but he's 0-2 in the UFC. Then you switch over to Gregory. Yes, he's debuting, but he lost his lone fight on the Contender Series. I will say I believe he went back to LFA after that and won 2 straight fights, so that's why he finds himself in the UFC now. Of those 9 wins, 4 of those are KO TKOs and 4 of them are submissions, and 5 of those 8 finishes have came in the first round. So in our first 2 fights of the main card, we really have some straight killers here that love to finish fights. And when that's the case, it's hard not to predict another finish. I think this is going to be a barn burner, but I don't think it's going to last very long. I do believe that Dusko's boxing is very crisp. He's very technical. Yes, he did get clipped in that last one against Soriano, but I don't think Gregory, and again, he's a newer guy, of course, making his debut, so we don't know as much about him, but he's going to have that power to catch Dusko off guard, because you got to think Todorovic went back to the drawing board after losing, and he's probably polished up a few things in the stand-up as good as he already was. It's kind of scary to think of. Still such a young guy, only 28 years old. I'm going with Dusko Todorovic here. I think he gets the job done. First round KO TKO here for Dusko. He earns his second win in the UFC, and going to be on to big things if I'm not mistaken. They're wasting no time, giving this kid some challenges, and I think he's going to pass another one here with flying colors. On to the next fight, and to be honest with everyone, this is my fight of the night. This is my people's main event is what this one should be called, if I'm being honest with you. We've got a welterweight clash. Santiago Ponzinibbio is returning after his loss most recently, in his return fight, I should say. And he's coming up against Miguel Baeza, the absolute young stud. Carmel Thunder is back finally. Again, this is at 170 pounds. For Santiago, 27 wins, 4 losses. He's 9-3 in the UFC. 15 KO TKOs, 6 submissions. Out of those 21 finishes, 14 of those have came in the first round. He's got notable wins against guys like Sean Strickland via decision, TKO and KOs over Court McGee and Gunnar Nelson, a decision win over Mike Perry, and a brutal KO finish over Neil Magny, which headlined the very first card ever for the UFC in Argentina. Of course, that's the native land of Ponzinibbio. And the notable losses, he lost to Lorenz Larkin way back in his early UFC career via TKO. And then, like I said, in his return fight after a 2-year hiatus, lost to Li Jingliang via KO in brutal, brutal fashion. For Miguel Baeza, one of the biggest prospects in the UFC right now that's really flying under the radar. He's going to put people on notice for this fight here. He's 10-0, 3-0 in the UFC, another Contender Series guy. He won his lone fight on the show. He's got 7 KO TKOs, 1 submission, and out of those 8 finishes, 4 have came in the first round. Notable wins already in just 3 UFC fights against Matt Brown via TKO and submitted Takashi Sato. As well-rounded as they come. Really, both of these guys, I cannot wait for this fight. Again, the people's main event. This is my prediction for fight of the night. And even though I'm pulling up my notes here for who I think is going to win, I don't think this one's going the distance either. I think both these guys are just too powerful, too strong. They're too well-rounded. But who's going to be able to get the upper hand on one another, really, is the best way to put it here. And I'm going with the fresh blood in Miguel Baeza. I know that this is a huge step up for him, a huge jump. But Ponzinibbio, although he got KO'd in that last fight, and that can happen to anybody, he didn't really show much during the short time that it lasted anyway, in my opinion. But on the other end, Baeza, man, really in his prime right now, really young. He's got the crisp technical striking, and he's so strong and powerful. I think he can get the fight finished anywhere. And there's no chance that this goes to the distance. I just can't see it going the full 15 minutes. These guys are as tough as they come. I think Ponzinibbio definitely will have his moments. He's going to look better in this one than he did in that return fight against Li Jingliang. I know some people don't really believe in ring rust. I'm kind of hit or miss on the subject, but that didn't look like the Ponzinibbio we were used to. Because you got to think, before that hiatus, this was a guy that was on an 8-fight win streak and was looking like he was challenging for a title soon had he not had to go through all those injuries. And now Li Jingliang is no slouch. He's now a ranked top 15 guy, so he is a stud in his own right. But I expected a lot more out of Santiago. I think he is going to show us a lot more in this second bout here in his return state. But Miguel Baeza, I really am on the Baeza train. I believe in this kid. I think we could be on to a future title contender in this welterweight division. He really is very talented. He's got the build, the physique, the athleticism, the cardio. We've really seen it all from him already in only 3 UFC fights, and I think he adds a huge name to his resume here in Ponzinibbio at UFC Vegas 28. I think he gets the job done in the second round via KO TKO. I know it's hard to pick fight of the nights when they're not going to go the distance, but ladies and gentlemen, I believe this is going to be the number one option for fight of the night when the night is all said and done. Now, the next bout, and you'll have to excuse me for a second. The mouth's getting a little dry. I got to take a sip here. We've got Roman Dolidze and Laureano Staropoli. I believe that's how you say it. You guys can see it here on the screen if you're watching. So this is a really fun one too. Again, lesser-known guys, but really good, really fun stylistic matchups. Roman Dolidze is 8-1, 2-1 in the UFC. He's got 4 KO TKOs, 3 submissions, so 7 out of 8 via finish. 5 of those have came in the first round. No notable wins yet, but still early on in his UFC career. However, the lone loss on his record did come to Trevin Giles. That was via decision. And then for Laureano, he's 9-3. He's 2-2 in the UFC, 5 KO TKOs, 2 submissions. 4 of those 7 have came in the first round. Notable win against former title challenger Thiago Alves via decision, and a notable loss to Tim Means in his last outing via unanimous decision. So this is fun because Dolidze, and I'm sorry if I didn't say the weight class, it's a middleweight bout. So that's 3 out of 6 fights on this main card are at 185 pounds. My apologies there for not saying it off the top. This is going to be a really interesting stylistic fight, and this was one that you've got two guys that are still a little less proven when you look at their experience in the octagon. However, they're getting a main card spot, and I like to say this all the time, certain fights get put on the main card for a reason, no matter what their name or drawing power may be. And this is one of those where you're probably listening, and if you're not, more of a hardcore listener, and even for us too, it's not like we know a ton about Roman Dolidze and Laureano Staropoli, but it's on here for a reason. We say it all the time, and I think this is a very interesting stylistic clash. Roman Dolidze can be a misleading guy, and he's super well-rounded, and I think that's where the biggest advantage is going to come for him. While Laureano has honestly faced the tougher competition, again, with wins over Thiago Alves, a loss to Tim Means, he's definitely fought the better competition in the UFC thus far. However, I believe that a higher ceiling is that of Roman Dolidze, and that's what's kind of making me lean toward him here in this bout. I think it's going to be an interesting one. Very technical. I don't think it's going to be too wild. You never know. They could prove me wrong. For all I know, this could be the fight of the night. But I'm actually going Roman Dolidze here via submission. A lot of people are thinking he's going to get a KO TKO. I believe he's a pretty heavy favorite in this one. But I think he's going to honestly hurt Laureano and get the fight to the ground and finishing that way. I don't think it's going to come necessarily from dominant grappling or such. I think his hands are going to get him injured, and he's going to finish it with a submission in the second round. Roman Dolidze looking to continue climbing the ranks, inching his way closer, I should say, to the rankings in that 185-pound division. Now, our final two fights of the evening are the big boys at heavyweight. Both are containing top 15 contenders. In the first one, of course, the co-main event of the evening, we've got UFC veterans going head-to-head here, Walt Harris and Marcin Tybura. Walt Harris is 13-9 with one no contest. He's 6-8 in the UFC with the no contest. However, all 13 of his wins have came via KO TKO, and of those 13, 11 have came in the very first round. He's got notable wins against guys like Chase Sherman, Sergey Spivak, and Alexei Oleinik, all by way of KO TKO, obviously. But he does have some notable losses too. One of which being to Nikita Krylov, now a ranked light heavyweight, as we all know. That was via TKO. He lost the split decision to Shamil Abdurrahimov, got submitted by former champion Fabricio Verdum, TKO'd by Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov. And those, of course, are two in a row. So he's on a two-fight skid coming into this one. Marcin Tybura, on the other hand, he's riding some momentum right now, the best of his career, if I do say so myself. He's 21-6, 8-5 in the UFC. Of those 21 wins, 14 have been finishes, 8 of them KO, TKO, 6 via submission, 9 of those 14 in the very first round. Notable wins against guys like Andrei Arlovsky, Stefan Struve, Sergey Spivak, Ben Rothwell, and Greg Hardy. That last one against Hardy via TKO, all of the others via decision. He's riding a 4-fight win streak right now, looking to make it 5 and crack into the top 10 of this heavyweight division. Notable losses have came to Fabricio Verdum via decision, Derek Lewis via decision, and then TKOs and KOs to Shamil Abdurrahimov and our UFC Vegas 28 headliner, or one half, I should say, in Augusto Sakai. So this one is interesting because Walt Harris is in a difficult spot. As we all know, he went through that tragedy with his stepdaughter about a year and a half ago now, where he unfortunately lost her. And he took some time off, returned to the octagon, but he's on a 2-fight skid, not quite looking like the same Walt Harris. Of course, they came to Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov, two absolute studs in this heavyweight division. So no slouch there coming in on a losing streak. But Tybura, as I said, riding momentum right now, the biggest win streak of his UFC career. And if he can get a win here over a guy with a name like Walt Harris, it can really catapult him in to this top 10 of the division, especially a guy that's not fought for a title like so many ahead of him have. But, and I'm going to say this for both guys here, when they face their toughest competition, and right when they're about to break through that ceiling and catapult into that next echelon of this heavyweight division, they lose. And it's the same for both guys, as I said. So for Tybura, I think he's going to look to be pretty grapple heavy. He's a guy that likes to grind out a decision. And that's no hate toward him. I mean, he gets the job done, right? A win's a win. So I think he's going to look to grapple here, clinch up with Walt Harris, put him up against the fence, maybe even utilize some takedowns. It worked well against Greg Hardy. So I'll be curious to see if he can do the same with Walt Harris. Walt has shown some vulnerability with his chin lately, 2 straight via KO, TKO. Yes, against very powerful guys. Tybura, not the guy that's going to have like a one-shot KO. However, he can put punches in bunches, especially if he gets Walt up against the fence. I will say in Walt's last fight against Volkov, it was more so the body kicks from Volkov that inevitably ended up getting the finish, that TKO. So for Walt, what else does he have left in the gas tank? Can he pull out a win here against Tybura? He's still ranked in the top 10, so his career is not over by any means. However, a loss here would be 3 straight. You're really looking down this division, and if he continues to fall, we've got some big prospects coming up, especially guys like Tom Aspinall. Even Sergey Spivak, who these guys have beaten, is still a rising guy that's been getting some wins lately. So does he want to get fed to those young up-and-comers, or can he get the win here, bounce back from the losing streak, and then maybe get a top 5 guy in his next bout? I think this is going to be a relatively lackluster fight, and again, the heavyweights could always prove you wrong. We talk about these heavyweight fights on the main cards all the time. Those are usually between unranked guys. This time, of course, 2 top 10 fighters. I think Tybura is finally going to be able to get that big win, that big jump that he needs. This would be 5 straight wins for him. And really a big fight would be next, no matter who the name may be. Because if you look ahead of Walt Harris, that top 7, all of them are relatively big names that have headlined, main events for fight nights, even some that are main evented pay-per-views. And I think Tybura is really looking to take that next step. Sometimes it just takes people a little longer to get into that prime. And although he's a little older and a veteran, both of these guys, I believe Tybura right now is hitting his physical prime. And I think that's going to be enough to get the job done. This is my lone fight on the main card that I see going the distance. I just don't see Tybura being able to finish Walt Harris like we've seen some of these other guys do. I think he's just going to utilize the grappling, as I've said a couple times already. The clinch work, I believe, should be big for him. The punches and bunches up against the cage. And if it does get to the ground, I just think he'll more so utilize the top control. Will he get a KO on the ground? I don't believe so. Will we get a submission? I definitely don't see that happening, but that'd be a good prop bet, I'd have to imagine, for those of you that are bettors out there. So, man, as much as I would want to pick Walt to bounce back, I'm really, really going for Tybura here to continue his win streak, make it 5 straight, and crack in finally to that top 10 of this division. And now the main event of the evening, both guys coming off of main events in their last outing of fight nights. Jairzinho, I just butchered that. Jairzinho, there we go. Rozenstruik, number 6 in the division versus number 9 ranked Augusto Sakai, our 5-round heavyweight main event. Jairzinho is 11-2, 5-2 in the UFC. He's got 10 KO TKOs, 7 of which have came in the first round. Notable wins against Andrei Arlovski, Alistair Overeem, and Junior Dos Santos, all via KO TKO. And the 2 losses, Francis Ngannou via KO. We all know how brutal that one was in May of 2020. And then, of course, Cyril Gane. That was his most recent outing. It was the 5-round main event, one that a lot of people were really excited for, and it was a pretty underwhelming fight. And the same can be said for Augusto in his last outing. But for Sakai, he's 15-2-1, 4-1 in the UFC, and then he did also get a win on the Contender Series, so 1-0 there. Out of the 15 wins, though, he's got 11 KO TKOs, so a guy that still likes to finish fights. 6 of those have came in the first round already in his pretty young UFC career, really, both of these guys. Augusto's got wins over Chase Sherman via TKO, split decisions over Andrei Arlovski and Blagoy Ivanov, and a KO win over the co-main eventer and Marcin Tybura, as I mentioned. And the notable losses on his record, Czech Congo, funny enough, former UFC contender in the heavyweight division. That was at Bellator 179 in 2017 via split decision. And then he has a notable loss to Alistair Overeem in his most recent outing. And again, that was via TKO, by the way. One that was relatively lackluster on Sakai's end. And it really, to me, was the veteran expertise of Overeem that played the biggest difference in that one. So for these two here, Rozenstruik, Sakai, number 6, number 9, two top 10 guys looking to bounce back, coming into this main event off of losses. And a lot of fans are just kind of lackluster on this fight, this main event, not as excited. I can see that sentiment. However, when you have two guys that are coming off losses that have something to prove, they could be at their most dangerous state. And for Rozenstruik, a guy that's got so much power and can one punch KO you, he's going to be dangerous all the time. And that Gane fight, he really just didn't let the hands go. And I think it was out of the respect he had for Gane as a striker. For those of you that haven't seen Cyril Gane strike, elite level, especially for a heavyweight, the way he moves, picks his shots, his kicks, his punches, everything is perfectly timed and precise. So Rozenstruik, I just think, was afraid to pull the trigger because of him potentially getting caught. But for Sakai, he's a guy that's not going to necessarily one-punch KO you. Yes, he has power. These are heavyweights at the end of the day. But this is a guy that really loves to utilize the clinch, loves the punches and bunches, shots to the body, knees to the body, Muay Thai knees up to the face. He's very, very dangerous in the clinch. And we haven't really seen Rozenstruik get tested much in that area. So look for Sakai to definitely have the advantage there if it goes there and for however long it may last. I don't see this bout going to the ground very much. For Sakai, he really kind of had his weaknesses exposed against Overeem. Overeem immediately recognized that his grappling was better than Sakai's, took him down in that second and third round. I believe it ended in the third, maybe even the fourth. I can't remember. Noah would be here to fact check me usually. So Noah's going to be shaking in his boots, not being able to answer that one. But nevertheless, Overeem's grappling got the upper hand in their fight, and that's how he inevitably got the TKO finish on the ground. He beat him to a pulp when they were grappling. But Rozenstruik's not a guy that's going to come in and grapple, and Sakai's not going to grapple in terms of at least wrestling with Rozenstruik. So I think there's clear paths to victory for both guys in this one. Rozenstruik, I think, keep the distance and look to time the power shot that can really injure Sakai and wobble him bad. For Sakai, very elite level clinch striking, as I mentioned, especially to be a heavyweight. Look for that to play an advantage for him in this one. Will he be able to get Rozenstruik close? Will he be able to close that distance? That's my biggest question for this main event. I always like to have kind of, biggest questions going into these main events when we break them down. And this is going to be it for me. Can he close the distance? Because that's, I think, the only way Sakai can get the job done. Rozenstruik's going to have the speed advantage. He's going to have the power advantage. And that's why I'm picking Jairzinho Rozenstruik to bounce back in this UFC Vegas 28 main event. I think he gets it done after a feeling out fight over the course of 2 rounds. I think round 1, they're going to get a feel for one another. It's going to be relatively lackluster. Round 2, business will start booming a little bit more. Sakai may be able to get the clinch. Again, that's my big question mark in this one. But Rozenstruik will begin to kind of gauge his distance more in that second round. So much so, I believe he does have it all lined up perfectly to be able to get a third round KO, TKO finish in the main event, get back in the win column in this heavyweight division. And again, for both of these guys, not many names in front of them, and for both, a lot of fresh matchups as well. So it's very important. Huge implications here for both guys. Both coming in hungry off of losses, as I mentioned. Look for this to be better than their last outings. I should say, for the winner anyway, look for it to be a better outing. For the loser, I don't see this being a fight of the night contender. It's going to be too much of a feel-out process. Not a lot of leather slinging like we saw in the most recent heavyweight bout at UFC Vegas 27 between Justin Tafa and Jared Vandura. It's definitely not going to be one of those. Neither one of these heavyweight fights will be like that. So I am, at the end of the day, going Rozenstruik. I think he bounces back, gets a KO, TKO in round number 3. So yeah, I guess that's it. This is a pretty short preview, but usually, obviously, when there's 2 of us, we kind of go back and forth. We both kind of have our own thoughts and opinions. So again, we did have some technical difficulties. Hopefully you guys bared with me for this short episode. If you're watching on YouTube, hopefully the quality was good, messing around with some new overlays. We're going to still continue to keep grinding, making this video podcast as good as possible. For those of you listening still on Spotify, Apple, Google, all of our audio platforms, thank you for your support as well. Hopefully this was a good quality episode for you to listen to. Again, on the shorter side of things, but we like to keep it precise as much as we can. And when there's one guy, this is about as precise as I can get it. So let us know what you guys all think of the fight announcements we went over, what your thoughts are on the Ultimate Fighter reboot that just started this past Tuesday night. And then, of course, let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or if you listen. Be sure to follow us on our social media, comment on our Twitter and Instagram what your predictions are going to be for UFC Vegas 28. That leads me into kind of our closing out here, our outro. You can find our podcast on Twitter and on Instagram at BAJ_MMA podcast. Usually on fight days, we're doing result tweets, so you can interact with us there. We do polls on Twitter to see who everybody thinks is going to win in the main event. And then, of course, on Instagram, we post 2 to 3 times a week on when our new episodes come out. So be sure to give us some love there. Give us a follow. Let us know what you guys think. And then you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at dslee14, right down, opposite finger, right down here in the corner if you're watching on YouTube. So feel free to give me a follow. And, of course, Noah, you can find him on Twitter, on Instagram, at ntbaker_. But with that, I'm out, and we will see you all on Monday for the UFC Vegas 28 recap episode.